All right, so let's get into our lesson on our concept of a concept. This is going to give you philosophical insight into the nature of a concept. And we're just going to get started with that. So make sure that you're following all the instructions, doing just as I do and as I tell you to do to get your full credit for this task. All right, so you need your lined notebook paper, the size that the syllabus tells you to get, or bigger, but not smaller. And then you need to fold it in half. Now mine you're not going to see lines on the other side because I forgot to bring my notebook paper home, and I created this at home, and my notebook paper is at work. And so what I did was I printed from a paper template, from a lined paper template. I just printed onto some blank paper. But as you can see, I have lines on this side. Okay, so I want you to imagine, you're not drawing this. I'm just saying, you know, that if you have your regular notebook paper, or maybe you have a pad so you don't have this, but a lot of us will have like holes punched out here, right? Don't have to have punched out holes. What matters is that your paper's lined and that it's the proper size. Now, I want us to start in what's called portrait. So this is the portrait layout. And I want you to put the usual information that I have us put. So of course, you're going to write your first name here, your last name. Make sure that you keep all the information at the very top right corner because we might need this room to take notes in a minute. Make sure you put the days of the week that we meet. So if we meet Monday, Wednesday, put MW. If we meet Tuesday, Thursday, put TR. And then I want you to write, you can write POL1, okay? And that just will mean that, you know, this is Professor's Online Lesson 1, all right? Also, put the time that we meet. So here's the days, and then I want you to put the time right here. Okay, so do we start at 11? Do we start at 12:30? What time do we start at? 2? Okay, after you're done with that, and this does need to be on this side of the paper. So, right, this is the left side, the front side of your notebook paper, and this needs to be here. I'll explain more about that later on in the semester. And then this is the side with the holes, right? So actually, now that I'm thinking about this, what I want us to do is now turn the paper this way, okay? So if you do have holes or wherever this line is, it should be at the bottom, okay? Now, the title of this document is going to be this. Fold your paper in half so that you can follow my formatting. We're using this crease in the middle to kind of guide where we're putting information. So the title of this document is going to be Our Concept of a, and then right here, I want you to write the word concept, pause the video if need be. All right, so the title of this document is Our Concept of a Concept. Now, what generally is a concept? What do we mean by that? So our definition for a concept is going to be so what you want to do is write super small all the time so that you have enough room for the notes. Try not to go more than like that much further below because you need room to write stuff here, okay? So again, write small letters and try not to go more than an inch down into the space. So if you tend to have like big letters that go like this, or big letters and sentences that get longer and bigger as you write, you need to really try to use uniform writing. Okay, so what is a concept? A concept is an organizing idea that we use to to interpret, experience, and make sense of it. Okay. So when I say concept, this is the definition that I'm giving for concept. And of course, we've already used concepts to make sense of philosophy, to make sense of how this class is organized. You're using concepts right now to interpret this experience that you're having just listening to me as a teacher who uses flipped learning. Now, the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to draw a triangle. you might want to watch me draw the triangle first and then pause the video to make yours as close to mine as possible. So we want to keep the triangle on this side of this line right here. It's going to be an acute triangle, which means it's going to have a narrow base. Okay, no angles will be wider, I think, than 90. Is it 90? Or 45? I think it's 45 degrees to be acute. I'm not sure. Less than 90. But this is the size that you're going to want it. So again, you might want to just watch me. So notice I'm going to move over here because we need this space right here for part of a diagram that we're doing, okay? So we need this space for information, but we don't need all the space down here, so we can go down a little bit. So we're going to need space up here for information and space down here for information. So as I'm taking mental notes for myself, this is how I'm going to draw the triangle. I'd say this triangle is about 6 inches long, and notice how narrow the base is. Okay, so this would be an a great extra credit question. If I said, hey, what shape do I use to call your attention to an important concept? You would say the triangle. Or if I said, what am I generally calling your attention to when we see a triangle? You would say a concept. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to have triangles over every single word that names a concept, because most words do name a concept, but I'm going to highlight words that I really want you to pay attention to insofar as they name concepts of particular importance that we're going to be interested in this class. Now, when it comes to our concept of a concept, that is how we're going to think about, approach, analyze, identify, and visualize these organizing ideas that we use to interpret experience and make sense of it, I want you to understand that there's always going to be three parts, another great extra credit question. Okay, so here are the 3 parts. I want you to go down here to this left corner, right here. Why don't you draw that little angle? Down here, this is where we're going to take note of something that we're going to be calling the sign. So write I-S-I-G-N, sign. So this part of any concept, okay, so this is supposed to be true of any concept. This part of any concept, the sign part, what it's doing is it is naming a given concept. Okay, I want you to circle naming. That is what a sign does. Now, we can also use symbols to represent concepts, but we're not going to get into that. Now, as you can see, the triangle, of course, has how many angles? So that goes with what I said about a concept having how many parts? 3. Good job. You're remembering. Okay, so of course, the sign is what you might call a term, right? Like key terms. So key terms, once we know that we have a term to work with, we can think of, well, what does it mean, right? What does the sign that is naming this concept mean? In other words, what is the blank for the sign or term? What do you think I am thinking of? It starts with the D. Come on, let's make this interactive. What do you think? I know you're watching this on a video, but I'm trying to entertain you, right? Trying to keep you from getting distracted. Notice how I'm not just talking like this, but, you know, trying to make it fun. I don't know, maybe I'm using Instagram. I'm using those Instagram tricks, you know, where people go like that. Hey, let me have your attention. I'm drawing you in. Okay, back to the lesson at hand. So, definition, okay? So, a given concept, the next part that I want you to remember is that a concept is going to have a definition, or at least the ones that we'll be looking at, okay? So, insofar as we are concerned, at least for now, not philosophizing about concepts, okay? We are going to stipulate, which means we're going to work with this definition, even if we're not 100% sold on it. We're going to stipulate that it has 3 parts. A concept has a sign and a definition, at least the way we'll be using this in class. So what is the job of the definition? I don't want you to just say, it tells me what the word means. What does it mean to say, this is what the word means? In this class, we want a much more specific and technical understanding of a definition. And in fact, what is the definition of a definition? Whoa, what is it? What is your concept of a concept? What did you assume about concepts prior to this lesson? Did you assume they had 3 parts, 1 part, no parts? Did you assume they couldn't be analyzed? Is this new? Okay, so in terms of a concept, we are going to say that a definition presents. So you have the word definition right here. Notice that I'm at the top right angle. Let's make that mark. So please do not start here. And when we're writing out the information for this part of a concept, do not go past this line. When it comes to our concept diagrams, it's very important to keep the information about a given part of the concept in the correct place on a triangle diagram. Where we place the information is just as important as the information itself, because the placement is part of the information and you showing me visually that you know what the different parts are. So we don't want to go past this part right here, okay, when we are adding down here. So the definitions, insofar as we're concerned, and I want you to come down here, let's put it this way. Let's say it presents the requirements something must meet to count as, and I actually want to put parentheses here, to count as a correct example. Actually, I don't want to say example, let's say instance of a given concept. Okay, so the job of the definition is that it presents the requirements something must meet to count as a correct instance of a given concept. What I would like for you to do here is I want you to circle the word requirements, and that is it. Just like I had you circle the word names for signs to make something stick out to you about the sign for a concept, I want you to circle requirements. That is the job of the definition. The job of the sign is to name a concept, give it a label. The job of the definition, of course, is to tell us what requirements, what is true of that which is named by a given sign. All right, so this is going to bring us to the third part of how we're thinking about a concept, or concept of a concept. Okay, so the third part of a concept, again, think about, when you're learning about concepts, you get the key term, you get the definition, and of course, something that helps you to understand the definition and a key term, the sign that names a concept, is you can get or give, present what? Examples. So of course, that is something we're going to write down here, and we're going to always note the example or examples of a concept here. So I want you to write example, and then I want you to put \s, because for some concepts, according to some people, there's only one thing that counts as an example. But for some concepts, there could be multiple things, multiple instances of reality that go along with how a concept is defined according to its name. Now, actually, I want to take a step back, and I want you to write sign and then put like this, signs, okay? And then, again, the sign is doing what? It's naming, and I want to change this to names, okay, to keep the language uniform. So change that, N-A-M-E-S, because this says presents. It doesn't say presenting. So now we have sign or signs. Oh, actually, no, it's only one. I don't know what's going on with me. It's too late in the afternoon when I'm making this video. Names, so that would be with an S, N-A-M-E-S. I repeat, my final answer, N-A-M-E-S and sign. Names a given concept. Now, I do want you to put in parentheses right here. We'll have at least one word, but no more than a few. Now I'm using the word few. Some people think that literally means 3, and maybe it does. That's what I'm thinking. I say that because, remember, it's a sign for a concept is just naming the concept. And sometimes people will give me a big long phrase or a sentence for the sign. But then what's happening is the person's actually giving me a definition or an example, or they're giving me a description. And that's not the job of the sign. A sign is something short and brief that lets you know that you need to be maybe thinking about, figuring out, or applying a definition, okay? All right, so example or examples. Let's get back to that part of our lesson on a concept. So this is what we're gonna write about the example or examples. That part, okay, so we're just going to say presents, let's not say presents, just let's say the instances of reality that actually meet / manifest, giving you different words, whatever is clicking here for you here, but I want you to write them all down. Meet, manifest, reflects. Notice I have, let's say instances. Let's put a slash. Maybe there's only one instance for that concept, or it's instances. So the instances are instance of reality that actually meet or meets. Manifest. That one I already kind of messed up, but it's manifest and then manifests. Reflect, reflects. All of the requirements given in a definition. And by the way, don't worry if you are going below the line here. You can see that I did that here. It's not a big deal. Now, again, so I'm going to actually tell you to do something else with this. So what I'd like you to circle here are, I want you to circle this phrase, instances of reality. Circle all three words as one circle. Okay, so one circle over instances and then around reality. And then I want you to circle actually meets. No, don't circle anything else now that I'm thinking about it. Okay, so the sign names a concept, right? The definition presents the requirements for something to count as an instance of the concept. It's just describing, telling you what the requirements are. Think definition. And then the examples are the things themselves that the definition is pointing to. Now, there's one more thing that I want us to note here in our diagram. So I'd like for you to, first of all, check your formatting. Does it look very close to this, right? Do you have information that's way past here? You need to fix that or redo this. Do you have information here that starts up here? Then you need to redo this, because really examples should be by this part of the triangle, this part of this angle. This, is it too high up? Do you have a lot of information over here? It should not be here, so you'll have to redo that. And notice that I did not even come close to coming to this side of the triangle. Okay, so one more bit of information. Let's turn the document this way. Make sure that the triangle's at the top and that you have it back landscape like this. Okay, so now I want us to do like an arrow here. You can do it right next to, let's do a dot right next to the word examples. I'm not going to be able to do a dot by the word definition, I just realized, but that's okay. So we're drawing an arrow. We can still do a dot. Okay, and I want you to draw an arrow that meets this one. I wish I'd done that more centered, like I wish that was more right there, but it's not a big deal, okay? So what do you think this means? Why am I drawing an arrow going from the examples to a meeting point where the definition is? Okay, if you want to pause the video and think about it, you can. But here's the thing. We're going to write, let's put it in brackets. In theory, the examples align with, let's write actually, fully. And by the way, when I cross out stuff, you don't have to have like this. I'm not going to be looking to see that you cross anything out. If you're using pencil, white out, you want to make it look crispy, really cute. You don't want any of this mizzle in there. I'm making that up. That's a mess. Okay. Any mizzle in there, you can just white it out or whatnot. Okay, so in theory, the examples fully align with the what? What do you think this means? The examples fully align with the what? The definition. And vice versa. Okay. Now, there's one last thing I'm going to give you in this video to do on your own. No, I think I'm not going to give that. Sometimes I give extra stuff to people to do in a video, but we're not doing this. All right, so here are some good review questions to take note of. Okay, you can make some, I would make some quiz cards, especially if they're handheld, to encode the information better. And then when you're at a stoplight, or instead of pulling out your phone, or you're waiting in line at the grocery store and pulling out your phone, you can pull out your quiz cards. Okay, you can be old school. But here's some good questions to review and have on quiz cards. What shape are we using to highlight important or call attention to concepts in this class? What shape will we be using to analyze and visualize concepts? Write all these questions down and study them throughout the semester. It's going to make life easier. What do we call the part of the concept that's at the bottom left corner? What do we call the part of a concept that's at the top right of the egg triangle? What do we call the part of the concept that we always note at the bottom right angle? Okay. Other questions to write down that help you to make sure that you really understand this lesson is, what is the job of the sign? What is the job of the definition? What is the job of the examples? What words did we circle and hence highlight or bring to the front from the sign, the description of the sign? What words did we highlight, or I should say circle, right? So if I circle, you circle, right? If I highlight, you highlight. What words did we circle for definition? What words did we circle for examples? If I'm talking about instances of reality that actually meet, manifest, or reflect all of the requirements for a given definition, what part of a concept am I talking about? If I'm talking about presenting the requirements something must meet to count as a correct instance of a given concept, what part of the concept am I talking about? What is that part of the concept called? And just in case I didn't already give you these questions, how many parts does a concept have according to this lesson? How many parts does a concept have as far as we're concerned? Okay. What shape are we using? Where does the information go? Great review questions.